Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another Top 5 Tuesday edition of Main Street Sports Today, where we are presented, as always, by our friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Wade Neely sitting in the saddle alongside the one and only. He is Calvin White, and our producer Mark Rogers making the magic happen behind the scenes here at Main Street Sports Today. Calvin, good afternoon. How we doing?
Good afternoon. I'm doing good. We mentioned it a little before. We got on the air today, but a little cloudy. The weather looks like it's about to rain for the first time in a good while. So I think David's mentioned it the last 2 weeks that his yard's looking a little brown. So a little rain might be good for us.
Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I snuck in a mow last week, and I probably overdid it. I probably went a little too – I probably could have waited a while, but I was itching. And – I was thinking, I'm kind of looking at the mower in the garage, Calvin, and I'm like, is that the last time this year? Are we done? Do I need to winterize this thing? What's going on here? But it sounds like, maybe a little precip. It's going to be hot either way, though. It looks like we're in the 90s to upper 80s for the next little bit, but a little sprinkle wouldn't hurt nobody, I suppose, right?
No, I did the exact same thing about a week ago. I mowed my yard for what's hopefully the last time, until the weather starts cooling down, and hasn't rained in a while, so it hasn't grown that much. So hoping I can put that off a little bit longer.
Yeah, kick that can down the road a little further as we'll see what Mother Nature has for us. But hoping things stay on the up and up here, at least for the next little bit. And we hope that you guys are somewhere nice, safe, warm, and dry, and ready to rock and roll with us. We've got a big show lined up today. Coming up in our second hour, we will check in with our good friend, as we do almost every week, virtually every week, Chip Walters, who's the MTSU Blue Raider voice. Happy Chip on this show today. He's always upbeat, but today he's sure to be happy because MTSU picked up their first victory of the college football season out in Reno over the weekend. We'll also get into the grab bag. And the grab bag might be getting stuffed a little more. We've got some other headlines that we might be adding in there. But we've got some news and notes. We got some nuggets from preps to pros type situation there. We'll get Calvin's update from his high school football week 4 experience, rather. And then we will certainly get into some NCAA and NFL WNBA news as well as we get ready to close the show. At the final segment, in our second hour, top 5 sports stadiums on your bucket list, or top 5 stadiums on your sports bucket list. This is somewhat related to a story that's in the grab bag, so we'll save that for a little bit later on a tease. But Calvin, some stadiums out there that are certainly near the top of my list. I'm sure there are some that you are probably itching to get to as well, and so we will debate our top 5 on those. Should be fun. That's kind of a recap or a preview of what's to come in the second hour. Coming up here in just a matter of moments at 2:20, we will talk with Brian Reeves, Austin Peay Radio. You may have heard of Austin Peay. You may have even heard of them from our friend Chip Walters, as the Govs have been on fire at the NCAA FCS and FBS levels, and we'll have an update from their radio voice. Good friend of the show, Brian Reeves, set to join us. We'll also talk this day in Braves history. Astros got a win last night, but it came at a cost. We'll tell you guys more about that, and that's kind of what we got on tap for the first and second hours here. Big show today lined up, Calvin.
Yeah, always big show on Top 5 Tuesday. We haven't had Brian Reeves on the show yet this year, so hopefully he can give us a little bit more insight on the Govs than kind of what I've been able to give through the first couple of weeks. But as always, excited for another good show on Top 5 Tuesday.
Absolutely. And you're my first and real only source. But when I do need to go outside, yeah, Brian is about as good as we can ask for. So excited to chat with him coming up here in just a matter of moments. So with that being said, that's kind of a setting of the table, as it were, for the next couple hours here on MSST. Should be fun. We're glad that you guys are with us. And Calvin, have I missed anything? Are we ready to get this thing started?
I don't believe so. I think we're ready to roll.
Okay, without any further ado then, boys and girls, let's give you yesterday's results. Let's give you today's schedule on a little thing we like to call the Rundown.
This is the Rundown.
To the rundown we go, boys and girls. And your results from last night start indoors. And they start with volleyball, as Zion Christian picks up a 3-0 victory over Dixon Academy. Green Hill topping Riverdale in straight sets. It was Middle Tennessee Christian 3, DCA nothing. Pope John Paul II outlasting Oakland. It was a 5-set thriller, but again, Pope John Paul II winning that one 3-2. Providence Christian with a 3-0 win over Good Pasture. Spring Hill 3, Community nothing. Cookeville takes care of Stewart's Creek 3-0. It was Murfreesboro Central Magnet and Summertown. No score listed. We'll see if we can get you a score here in just a moment, but Central Magnet and Summertown were set to play last night in volleyball action. A couple other ones to close it out. Warren County picking up a 3-0 win versus Laverne, and it was White County topping Smyrna 3-0. Soccer scores to you, my friend.
Over in high school girls soccer, Columbia Academy wins 3-2 over St. Cecilia Academy. Lipscomb Academy wins 4-3 over Father Ryan. Harpeth Hall beats Brentwood Academy 2-0. Lawrence County puts a whopping on Marshall County 9-0. Harpeth and Lewis County tie at 0. Cornersville wins 9-2 over Loretto. BGA wins 9-0 over Middle Tennessee Christian. And Pope John Paul II wins 9-0 over Cane Ridge.
Other scores from last night. We mentioned Major League Baseball. The Braves defeat the Nationals 11-3. The Astros took care of the Rangers 6-3. Had a double dose of Monday Night Football last night. One was close, one was not. The first one was the close one. It was Tampa Bay with a 20-19 victory, outlasting the Houston Texans last night. Good win for the Bucks down there. Chargers took care of the Raiders. Game didn't live up to as much of the hype as I had forecasted yesterday, but it was a good win for the Chargers, 20-9 in the second game of that NFL Monday Night Football doubleheader. To the schedule we go for today. Volleyball action begins at 5 p.m. as Spring Hill travels to Giles County. Also at 5, you can catch Hampshire, who is at Perry County. 5:45 showdowns as Grace Christian Franklin will visit Providence Christian. Franklin Christian is at Zion Christian tonight. Also at 5:45, Middle Tennessee Christian at BGA, and Franklin Road Academy is at Columbia Academy. 6 p.m. start times. Santa Fe is on the road at Eagleville. Portland traveling to Hendersonville. It'll be Mount Pleasant at Lewis County. Battle Creek visiting Marshall County this evening. Rockvale is on the road at Riverdale. Columbia making the trip over to Shelbyville. It'll be a 6 p.m. showdown as Smyrna travels to Stewart's Creek. Siegel is at Blackman. That is actually a 6:30. First serve tonight, 6:30 for Siegel at Blackman. No start time listed, but we do want to mention on our schedule, we do show Laverne set to travel this evening to Wilson Central.
Moving over to girls soccer, everyone stick with me here for this long-winded schedule for tonight. Antioch is at Glencliff at 4:30. McGavock at Cane Ridge at 5 o'clock. University School of Nashville is at Clarksville Academy. Nashville Christian at Ezel Harding. Webb School at Franklin Road Academy. Davidson Academy at Good Pasture. Hillsboro is at Lawson. Columbia Academy is at Middle Tennessee Christian. Blackman is hosting Oakland. Tip Antioch Global at Harpeth Hall at 5:30. Clarksville Northwest is at Henry County at 6 o'clock. Cookeville is at Lebanon. Mount Juliet at Portland. Giles County at Spring Hill. Greenbrier at Station Camp. Murfreesboro Central Magnet at Tullahoma at 6 p.m. Livingston Academy at Watertown, Smyrna at Wilson Central. CPA is at BGA, Fairview at Creekwood, Springfield at East Robertson, Battle Creek at Forest, Franklin Christian at Grace Christian Franklin, Sycamore at Harpeth. All those games are at 6 p.m. Wade, you want to close us out in girls soccer?
Yep, girls soccer, we got a lone 6:30 kickoff tonight when Culleoka travels to Richland. Be down there in the cornfields. The two close rivals will get it on in Linville tonight. 7 p.m. showdown as Gallatin travels to Beach. Centennial is on the road at Brentwood. Also 7 o'clock kickoffs for Kirkwood at Clarksville. West Creek at Dixon County. Green Hill traveling to Hendersonville this evening. Franklin will do the same at Independence. Merrill Hyde will visit Martin Luther King. Page is on the road tonight at Nolansville. Summit traveling to Ravenwood. Rockvale and Siegel will battle at 7. Also at 7, Laverne versus Stewart's Creek. Stewart's Creek, your host in that showdown this evening. Clarksville Northeast making a trip up to Trigg County, Kentucky at 7 tonight. Lincoln County is at Zion Christian. A 7:15 start time tonight as Hume Fogg visits Valor Collegiate. Final pieces of the puzzle here on your schedule for tonight. The Braves and Nationals are commencing a doubleheader this afternoon, and game one is underway. We'll get you an update on that later in this first hour. Also, still to come at 5:45, game number 2 of that doubleheader. Again, Braves at the Nationals tonight. That one will be shown on FanDuel Sports South. 7:10 this evening, the Rangers and Astros will pick their series back up. MLS action, more on this in just a matter of moments, but the U.S. Open Cup semifinals will be played tonight, and if you don't have Apple TV, you're in luck. You can watch this one tonight. It'll still cost you, though, of course, because that's how the world works. But the Philadelphia Union will be at NSC tonight. That is a 7 p.m. kickoff, and that game will be shown on Paramount Plus / I believe, the CBS Sports Network. WNBA action. Double dose tonight of playoff festivities as the Dream head to the Fever, looking to close that series out at 6:30. And the Aces will be at the Storm to follow at 8:30. Both of those games, again, are on ESPN. Ladies and gentlemen, that is your schedule for today. Those were last night's results, and that concludes today's rundown. Top story, as always, brought to you by our fine folks at Piggly Wiggly over at Neely's Mill in Columbia. They are open from 11 a.m. until 6 p.m., so make sure and check them out for your delicious daily deli lunch options. They also offer hand-cut meats, and everything is cost plus 10% at the cash register. Piggly Wiggly, Neely's Mill in Columbia, presenting you our top story. We just told you guys that NSC is back in action tonight. And it is the U.S. Open Cup. It is the semifinals of the U.S. Open Cup. NSC earning the right to host the Philadelphia Union. These teams do not like each other. They don't like each other in the regular season of MLS action. Calvin, I can only imagine. There's been red cards in the previous 2 outings this season. I can only imagine emotions will probably be flaring as NSC continues to make its deepest run in the U.S. Open Cup. They are a win away, my friend, from advancing to their first ever U.S. Open Cup championship, or final, rather.
Yeah, ever since the franchise was founded, back in it's been a while. It feels like 2016 or 2017, I want to say. There's always been hype around the club, and so this is really cool for all the local soccer fans to, I guess, finally have a local team to root for that's actually making noise in the posties. The Titans and the Preds haven't done that for a while, so I would imagine this is pretty cool for the soccer community in Nashville to kind of have something to root for.
Absolutely. And again, it's a berth in the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup final on the line tonight. Nashville has made one other championship final. We referenced it on the show yesterday, but they made the Leagues Cup championship 2 years ago. They actually earned the right to host that match. I was on hand for that one as Messi and Inter Miami came to town. And Calvin, that was one of the crazier finishes and crazier finals you will ever see. I believe the actual regulation score was 2-2, but they go to penalty kicks, and they got so deep in penalty kicks, they went 10 rounds deep. That means you get the goalies or the goalkeepers involved. And unfortunately, that was kind of how the cookie crumbled for that day. Unfortunately for Nashville, they lose in that penalty kick shootout that goes 10 rounds deep. Hoping none of that takes place tonight. But we mentioned tempers have flared. There's been some red cards flashed in the regular season meetings between these two teams, kind of setting the stage. 10 meetings all time. Nashville has only won 3 of those. Philadelphia has won 4, but there have been 3 draws. So maybe some penalty kicks to be had. To me, I could be wrong, Calvin, but it kind of feels like kind of a rock'em sock'em robots, a little rough and tumble type match tonight. I will not be surprised if this does end up tied after 90 minutes and they have to go to extra time / penalties.
No, I wouldn't either, and that would just kind of add to the suspense a little bit more. You get to this point in the year and, you're playing for a trophy. It's kind of cool when you get games like that, especially in the postseason. So we'll definitely keep an eye on this, and I'm sure we'll potentially discuss this result on the show tomorrow.
Yeah, it should be fun, and looking forward to it. Going to try my best. Going to try my absolute best to make it out tonight, but if not, again, we told you guys you can watch that one on CBS Sports Network / Paramount Plus. If you were on the fence, I don't know, maybe this sways you, maybe not. Maybe you're thinking about going to the game, but you need a little extra oomph to get you in the building, Calvin. What about dollar hot dog night? So you got a semifinal of the U.S. Open Cup, and it's dollar hot dog night. Nashville SC pulling out kind of all the stops to try and hopefully get a good crowd on hand for this one this evening.
Yeah, you're not finding a dollar hot dog at many professional sporting events these days. So if you were not already inclined to go watch some soccer, you can get some cheap dinner as well.
Yeah, go out and get the tickets are relatively cheap. I think we said on the show yesterday you can get in for $20 or so, maybe a little more. Crowds have been a little sparse at times over the years at the midweek, so hopefully get a good crowd tonight. Hopefully get all the dogs you want. Hopefully you get an NSC victory, whether that is in regulation or extra/penalty kicks. But hopefully NSC can punch their ticket again to the U.S. Open Cup Finals, which I believe will be played. I don't have that date right in front of me, but it's about a month from now. So you got about 2 or 3 more weeks to kind of get prepped. But again, NSC tonight versus the Philadelphia Union. Should be a fun showdown. It's at Geodis Park. Kickoff again comes your way at 7 p.m. Calvin and I are going to step aside. Quick timeout. When we come back, we're going to dip our toes into the college football landscape. We'll talk all things Austin Peay. We've got our good friend Brian Reeves on the other side who will join us. It'll be Govs talk when we come back right after this. You're watching Main Street Sports Today, where we're presented by our friends at TOA of Columbia.
Closer. All new Sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mid Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs.
Winning just got closer.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
Busy bee, yeah, busy bee. If you need...
Hold on, y'all, hold on. I need to make a call. Hey, this is Brianna with Busy Bee. I'm giving you a call to let you know your technician is on his way.
3-3.
Oh, busy bee. Guys, not yet. Not yet.
Busy bee, oh,
Now I'm ready, guys.
Call 775-7833.
Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
First hour of Main Street Sports Today. We are rocking and rolling here on this Top 5 Tuesday alongside Calvin White. Wade Neely sitting in the saddle here. Calvin and David Wilson back at it tomorrow. David Wilson and Mo Patton will sit in the seats on Thursday, and yours truly and Mo will be back on Friday. Big show, shows lined up the rest of the week, but a big show and a big guest lined up here for us as we kick things off at 2:20 this afternoon. We teased his appearance early when we kind of set the stage for everybody, and patiently waiting in the green room. It's our privilege and great welcome to our good friend Brian Reeves, who is back with us here, talking all things Austin Peay, and I mean all things Austin Peay. Good afternoon, Brian. How we doing?
Hey, Wade. Good. Been a while. Too long, Calvin. Thanks for the invite. Glad to be with you this afternoon. Always happy to talk Austin Peay and spread the message of the Govs.
Absolutely. And Brian, a little insider baseball. Yesterday I was talking with Calvin and I said, hey, who should we get to maybe come on at 220? And he threw your name out there, and I said, oh, baby, let's bring my man Brian on. In a previous life, a long life ago, I lived in Clarksville, and it was an honor to share many a press box and many a Govs events with Brian. So I said, yeah, let's bring our guy back. And so good to see you, partner. Thanks for taking some time.
Hey, listen, back then I had hair, but you haven't lost any. So I don't know what that – and plus, that preview, I got to find Chip's photographer. I can get some better headshots. This, not – I have a face for radio. There's no doubt about it. But I got to find Chip's photographer to get some better looks going.
We can work on that. And Calvin is, we're a media company, so we might be able to come up with somebody to hook you up, Brian. But an honor and a privilege, and we're delighted that you have taken some time with us here today. And Brian, let's just dive right in. Austin Peay obviously made headlines in a sense week one, beating MTSU in Murfreesboro. Calvin was on hand that day, 34-14. They made a little bit of more headlines in a losing effort, falling at Georgia. And then kind of picking on somebody their own size for a change. They tuned up Morehead State last week, 56-7. Through 3 weeks, kind of set the stage for us from what you've seen from this Govs team.
Well, through 3 weeks, it's as balanced of an offense as you could want. 624 on the ground, 615 through the air. You can't ask for better balance than that offensively. The biggest question going in, and Calvin knows this, and it was no secret around Clarksville, is what this defense was going to look like. You had two guys returning. Now, granted, both were all UAC performers with Davion Hood at a defensive end position and Ellis at cornerback position. But everybody else was transfer portal or guys that had been in a rotational role over the last couple of years, really asking them to play an every down role. So the defense was the unknown. And so far, it's the defense that's been the most dominant. You saw what they did against Middle, holding them to 0 for 13 on third downs. I go back to the closing drive at Georgia for 6 plays inside the 5-yard line, and they don't get in the end zone, go into halftime with a huge momentum boost for us. You saw last week we allowed a late touchdown against Morehead State, the only score of the game, and really that was when our seconds and thirds were in, and there was just some miscommunication on passing off a receiver to the second level. So far it's been this defense. This defense has been the story. We all knew the offense was going to have punch. We knew there were pieces of the puzzles when you talk about the arrival of Chris Parson on the transfer side, the emergence of that 3-headed running back monster that are all sophomores or redshirt sophomores. So we knew there was some punch offensively. The unknown was defense. But so far through the first 3 weeks, defense has been the headline at Austin Peay.
Brian, sticking with the defense, people have mentioned this a couple times, in post-game interviews with Coach Jeff Ferris and our weekly media availability with him. But, coming into the year with, 70-something new guys on the team, and like you said, only 2 returners on defense from last year, units don't usually gel that quickly when
you're right.
When there's, that many new players and only, 2 returning starters. How have they kind of, been able to gel this quickly and put up performances like they have?
Well, out of that number, 22 of those transfers or new faces were specifically on the defensive side. But from that, there's experience. And I wrote the numbers down. And I keep it on my spot chart every week. Of those 22 defensive transfers, there's already 971 tackles between them, 21 and a half sacks, 21 interceptions. So you went and got guys that were either graduate transfers or at the end of a career somewhere else, and they came in and just and have come together as a unit on this side. Part of it is Greg Jones. And I say part of it's Greg Jones because he comes to us from Cookeville, had a fantastic job with the Golden Eagles last year. This group had to learn each other just like Greg Jones had to learn them. And I think there's something to that. It may be a little cliche. It may be a little too hokey to say, but I honestly think that's the difference. They all were at ground zero starting this defensive approach for 2025. They had to learn what Greg Jones wanted from them. Greg Jones had to learn what he had in them. And I think you've just seen them gel together. It starts with the front four. The pressure we've been able to get with that front four, you start with Davion Hood and Torrey Hamilton, who rotates back to us, Kendall Ball, who had a fantastic week last week against Morehead State. Those guys were rotational pieces over the last couple of years. So they're the stability of that defensive front. You fill in the back edge, and you don't sacrifice coverage with this defense. Coming together under what Greg Jones does, as aggressive as he wants to be, I think that's exciting as a player. There's no more playing on your heels defensively. We get aggressive. We attack. We go after quarterbacks. We run blitz when we need to on early downs in a series. So I think they like playing this style, and that's lended itself to this cohesion you see on the defensive side of the football.
And my next question is going to kind of lead into the one after that, but you mentioned the running back room. Last year it was basically, let's just hope Lavelle Wright has a good day. And then, that was it. But, this year the running back room's a lot deeper, and it's probably a lot more talented, especially with guys like Isaiah Groves coming in, who was a Power 4 football commit before Austin Peay was able to flip him. But, the Govs are averaging over 200 yards on the ground per game right now. When you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but when you can have that balance on offense, how much does that help when, Chris Parson, Austin Smith don't have to stand back there and throw it 30, 40 times a game like Austin did last year a lot of times?
That's exactly it. And let's not forget, Austin had a top 10 year throwing the football a season ago in relief. He wasn't the number one guy. Still threw for 2,300 yards with one less game in relief of Garcia. But you said it. We knew what Corey Richardson was. We knew what Cortland Simmons was. We knew Caden Williams would come back. As I said, all sophomores are redshirt sophomores. Last week, you got a shot of the future with Isaiah Groves, who, as you said, was a Power 5 guy until that injury in his senior year at East Robertson cost him a few looks. We're the beneficiary of that. Glad to have him. Hope he stays in red, white, and black for 4 years for us. But you're right. This running back room, and listen, as an old failed offensive lineman, as much credit as I'm going to give those backs, it starts up front as well. When you've got a Chandler Curtin, and if you've watched the video recap of last week's game, they go into the locker room, and Coach Jeff Ferris is so complimentary of Chandler and his stability at the center position. Because across that front line to his left and to his right, other than Harrison Wilkes, there really wasn't a returner on that front line. This group has gotten gritty and dirty. They've gotten to the point where, if you want to use a real-world comparison, they play like a Detroit Lions offensive line. There's no thrills. There's no superstar on this group other than Curtin, really, in my opinion. But they all play together. And to their left and to their right, they make sure they take care of each other. A little more movement under offensive line coach Michael Jell. You'll see that pulling guard. We've seen the swing tackle around the tight end. We've seen 3 tight ends on one side of the line in a couple of plays early in the season. So they're using it and deploying it, knowing the strength. It's a West Coast offense, there's no doubt. But it's a run-first West Coast offense, and the talent you've got there, you've got to utilize it.
Absolutely. Brian, go ahead. Sorry, Calvin.
Sorry. Brian, kind of sticking with the offensive line. Jeff Ferris, he's always been the first one to say it, that this year's offensive line is much more talented just overall than it was last year. And they have a lot more depth than they did last year, so they can rotate guys and get some fresh bodies in there. The offense has scored 96 points through the first 3 games, and, they've only given up, I think it's 6 sacks I looked this morning. How much better is that offensive line this year than last year?
The word you said is depth. I don't want to knock anyone that plays that position saying that we're more talented, but you're right. The injury bug is what cost this team a year ago, because Austin Smith, having that 2,300-yard season behind center, had to do a lot of it on the run, had to protect himself quite a bit. So the depth there, when you can pull in a Zach Bowden who transfers to us from Troy, a Nick Hilliard who's an all-Ivy League guy a year ago, now playing right guard for us. You back up with tackles from the Big Ten, or Seydou Ba, who transfers down to us from Tennessee State a season ago. That depth there, you saw it. I saw it on display at Georgia. I saw it a little bit at Moorhead. They kind of stayed with their 5 during a series. But when we were between the hedges, they were rotating constantly. As much as you saw receivers come on and off, it was guards and tackles coming on and off, keeping this offensive line fresh against how good an SEC opponent is, obviously. But that's the difference. We can go 9-10 deep. We can go 2 legitimate offensive fronts, in my opinion, and not drop off on production. And the key, again, any game of football, I don't care what level you play. If it's Pee-wees on a Saturday morning at the fairgrounds or Sunday afternoon inside Nissan, that line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball is a difference maker, and you're seeing it this year with Austin Peay.
Brian, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, from afar, I've really admired, and Mo and I have discussed, obviously, When I was in Clarksville, there were real questions about whether or not that program should continue, and we certainly have seen tremendous success in the years, and it feels like that decision has been made correctly, if nothing else. But I'm always fascinated, always curious. How does Austin Peay continue to churn over rosters, as you've kind of discussed right here, but also coaching staffs, and still kind of continue to be one of the standard bearers at the FCS level. Is there some secret that you can assign to that, or is this just kind of a generational run in terms of hiring coaching staffs right now?
If it's a secret, we don't want to let it out. Let's say it that way.
Okay, good point.
You were here when I started. This is my 13th year being the play-by-play voice for football. For 3 years, I didn't call a win. If you'll remember, the longest losing streak at the college football level was Austin Peay in 39 straight. Finally broke that streak in my third year and got into it. What we've done at Austin Peay is made a commitment. And it's not just football, it's all sports. And Calvin can attest to this, being here on a daily basis and covering sports across the board. There's a commitment to, first and foremost, facilities. You remember old Governor Stadium, Wade. I know. Mm-hmm. Now you see Forterra and what it has become, what it's become in the locker room, what it's become in the workout room, the training room, and the fitness facilities, and even the recovery with our athletic trainers in that group. Top notch. You look at the commitment in baseball and softball, the rejuvenation of Raymond Seahan Park, Cheryl Holt Field on the softball side is as good of a venue in the A-Sun or around the Southeast as you're going to find. Commitment to build a pure soccer field, and now it will double as a lacrosse field now with the start of lacrosse next spring. So the commitment to facilities, the commitment to where a student athlete trains, lives, and the I mean, it sounds simple to say the dorm, and I'm not trying to do it all to be commercial, but I absolutely am, because previous athletic director Gerald Harrison would always say, if I get a recruit on campus, they're coming here. Mm-hmm. Because they're going to think we're a second tier. They're going to think we're not as good as school A or B. But then when they walk through the door and they see the facilities, they see where they're going to live, they see where they're going to eat, they see where they're going to train and hopefully prepare for a professional life in a sport they love. We're as good as it gets at the FCS level. And, we pay attention to what Vanderbilt does stadium-wise. We pay attention to what goes on in Knoxville and Memphis, and especially at TSU or UT Martin or Tennessee Tech, Western Kentucky. We watch what goes on around us and either answer or exceed here at Austin Peay to make sure that student-athlete experience is second to none, and those quality student-athletes continue to come. And you mentioned coaches, and I know this is a longer answer. Sometimes you take gambles, and we all know that sometimes gambles don't pay off, and sometimes they do. Hiring Will Healy was a gamble, the youngest head coach at the FCS Division I level at the time. That paid off. Mark Hudspeth brought in for a one-year period, took us to an OVC championship in 2019. Scotty Walden struggled early, built it back up to back-to-back championships in 21 and 22. Now you look at Jeff Ferris, a young man who had no head coaching experience, but had been a coordinator under years under two of the best in the business. And you look at Chip Kelly and his experience he had out at UCLA, and you look at Coach Cutt over at Duke. Mm-hmm. So, yes, they may be younger, but taking that experience and seeing something has been a real benefit. So sometimes you got to roll the dice, and so far it's come up aces and I won't say snake eyes, but it's come up positive for the Governors in the last few shots.
Yeah, they've been shooting a hot pair, to say the least, in coaching. And I love what you said about the facilities. And not every school can make that claim, right? If you can just get them on campus, we can seal the deal. And I do want to ask you, too, we're talking with Brian Reeves here, all things Austin Peay. And Brian, as we get into it, how has the transition been as you got an APSU alumnus, obviously, and Jordan Harmon kind of being the face now? How has the adjustment been with Gerald Harrison kind of departing there?
I don't know that we've noticed it. And just to be honest and frank with you, when you look at Jordan was a student athlete here, played baseball here. Jordan was in an administrative role here for a couple of years, left, went to work in Florida, came back to Austin Peay a couple of years ago under Gerald. So I don't know that we've seen a difference yet, because I think Jordan is just building off of what Gerald had done and continues to do. Now, Jordan's going to have his own style and put his own stamp on here, but I think being a student athlete in the same halls, in the same facilities that he played in, worked in, and lived in is nothing but a benefit, because he knows exactly what these student athletes are going through. We've added lacrosse, so that's a brand new bridge to cross for us. We're going to understand what that does. You've seen the resurgence of Coach Fanning in the baseball program. That makes Jordan thrilled, and he'll continue to build on that. Our softball team last year had a record-breaking year, and Coach Cassie and that group continues to build. So across the board, F&M Bank Arena, the commitment to our basketball programs, moving from the Dunn Center to a brand-new state-of-the-art arena, which is the crown jewel in our conference, quite honestly. I'm a little biased, but I honestly think it is. So I think we're just building on the blocks that were already laid foundational wise. And I think Jordan will do a fantastic job continuing to grow this because of his unique eye, if you will, of being a student athlete right here at his alma mater.
Calvin, what else you got for us? Calvin might have left the building there. Brian, are you still there?
I'm still with you.
Okay, all right. Sometimes if the mice aren't running on the treadmill fast enough, we sometimes pop out for just a second. But Calvin has stepped out. So, Brian, I do want to kind of continue that conversation. The age-old kind of sentiment at some of your FCS schools is, well, what will suffer as a result of so much investment in football? And at Austin Peay, though, it seems like, and especially kind of the answer you just gave, it seems like rising tide lifting all boats type situation. Is that kind
100%.
of how it's played out?
100%. Yeah, you've seen it. You know, President Michael Akari will tell you and that athletics is the front door to any institution. So when you see a football team with a better record, your basketball team benefits from that because when you bring recruits on field and they see a winning program, they see crowd participation, they see every student participation being on and being a part of it. They want to be a part of it as well. It's echoed now. We just announced our largest ever enrollment at Austin Peay State University student body-wise. And I know it's not directly tied to athletics. I'm not that naive, but I do think it has something to do with it. I mean, there's an easier product to sell when there's things going on, whether it's athletic side, whether it's music side, whether it's theater side, whether it's biology, research projects, or a brand new medical building that just opened up on the campus of Austin Peay. There's so much going on as a university that, as the biased radio guy, that I see the rise in athletics rising, as you said, all ships that come along.
I'm loving what I'm seeing there. And Brian, as we've kind of talked through this, we mentioned the MTSU opening win. We've talked about the great performance defensively between the hedges there at Georgia, commanding last week versus Moorhead. Schedule makers not necessarily doing Austin Peay any favors in the sense that Abilene Christian, who's ranked number 14, is not only your first conference game, it's on the road. Can you kind of paint the picture for us, if you would, please, how difficult of an assignment this is now, trying to leap into conference play with one of your toughest conference foes on the road to start?
When we made the move from the Ohio Valley to what was the A-Sun, now the UAC, when we made that A-Sun move, it was Kennesaw State, it was Jacksonville State, it was Liberty. It was still bus ride trips if you want to. Now when you look at the UAC, quality of competition is, you can't argue it. But you're talking about going to an Abilene, going to a Tarleton, flying out to Utah Tech and taking on groups like that. So the quality of competition, and again, I'm biased, but if you look at the Missouri Valley in the FCS level and look at their top 25, go look at the UAC and their top 25. 4 teams this week in the UAC in the top 25, 3 others receiving votes. So you start looking at the quality of competition level of play. But you're right, having to go over to Abilene for the first conference game of the year. Luckily, after this week, we're back-to-back with 2 conference games back inside Forterra. But heading out to an Abilene Christian team that's 1-2, but a loss last week to a very good TCU team. Stone Earl is an incredible quarterback that we'll face this year, has a lineage there, has some experience with the same offense coordinator and Ken Patterson, the head coach there. So we'll have our hands full without a doubt. That running game that Calvin mentioned earlier that we talked about, that's 624 yards already on the ground, averaging just a little over 143 yards a contest. That's what's got to show up when we go on the road. They say defense goes on the road and wins championships. Well, for us, that defense is coming. We know that. But to help that defense, that running game's got to get established in the Lone Star State on Saturday night. That's the biggest piece to me. When we go on the road and travel, we head to Utah, we head back to hopefully what is our last game of the year against Tarleton, which could be, fingers crossed for everything in the UAC. That run game at that point has to be the dominant piece to this offense, because I think this defense can carry this team for quite a while.
Brian, I don't think Wade mentioned it while I was having some problems there, but, we've gone this whole time and have barely mentioned Chris Parson, who, transferred in from Mississippi State, played his last 2 years of high school at Ravenwood over in Nashville. And I only bring this up because I've seen a lot of people say it, and you've obviously seen a lot more Austin Peay football than I have, but there's a lot of people that say that Chris Parson is the best quarterback that Austin Peay has had in a long time. And, obviously don't want to compare, but, kind of where does he rank among the quarterbacks that you've seen come through Clarksville through 3 games, obviously?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Through 3 games, I'm not going to put him anywhere yet. And that's no disrespect to Chris. It's just I want to see a bigger sample size. Right now, I go back to 2019. Javon Craig and Jeremiah Oatsfall had to kind of rotate position due to injuries and things. But those 2 are my guys that are at the top of the list. And there's going to be a ton of – Trent Caffey comes to my mind and a lot of guys that I've seen. Chris, Calvin, you bring up a great point because of how good everyone knew Chris Parson was from those Ravenwood days, from getting recruited and going down to play for the Pirate at Mississippi State and unfortunate tragic events that kind of changed his course there. But so far, and Calvin, you've seen it, we haven't had to rely on Chris Parson yet. We haven't had to ask him to do anything more than you would ask any other quarterback in this system. And to me, that's the scary / exciting part if you're a Governor fan. You saw a glimpse of it on that scramble, and he scored his first rushing touchdown on Saturday against Morehead State. Throwing the football, like I said, 615 yards passing. We're averaging just a little under 175 yards a game throwing the football through the first 3. But it's not because he's had to force anything or create anything. Everything's been in the flow. Do I think Chris has that potential, that God-given ability to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks to ever wear the red, white, and black? Yes, 100% I do. But I'm thrilled to the fact that we haven't had to put it all on his shoulders yet or even have to ask him. There's situations coming. It may be Saturday night at Abilene. We may have a drive in the final 5 or 6 minutes where he has to create something and go get a win. You never know. So I'm thrilled that he's on my team. I'm thrilled that opportunity is there to put him in that category that you mentioned. But so far, we haven't had to have that from him. And that's what excites me because everything else has come together around him so far.
And, Javius Bond is a guy that, week 1 when I'm up in the press box at Floyd Stadium watching Austin Peay play MTSU, it's a guy that, I see he's on my flip card as number 2 on offense. But the same number 2 is out there on defense, and I spend 20 minutes trying to figure out who number 2 on defense is, and he's not on the flip card. But, that's a guy that, obviously you can only list guys at one position. But, that's a guy that, he's carrying the ball on offense at running back. He's catching punts, returning punts, things like that, playing defense. And, Jeff Ferris recruited him to Austin Peay to come play multiple positions and be that kind of 5-tool Swiss Army guy. What do guys like that bring to teams? And, what has Javius Bond kind of been able to do to help Austin Peay so far?
It's excitement. I mean, let's be honest. At the FCS level, we don't have a pure Heisman. We have an offensive player of the year. We have a defensive player of the year. So, a Travis Hunter at our level is rare. And I'm not saying that Bond is Travis Hunter. Nobody put that as a headline tomorrow morning. But Javius is a young guy. We knew what he was defensively. We knew what he was on special teams. And that's exactly what the main draw was to get him was kick and punt return. We knew what a kind of a difference maker he could be. You saw it against Middle on that punt return in the 3rd quarter that set us up for a very easy score late in that contest. You saw his only rush from scrimmage on Saturday against Morehead State go 80 yards and put 6 more on the board. The ability for him to just have that extra charge. There's a stable of running backs, but sometimes you just need that change of pace. Sometimes you just need to sneak a guy in on a jet sweep or bring a guy in on something that looks different formation-wise and talent-wise. But yet, on the other end of the ball, with Ellis on one side and Javius Bond on the other side, I'm sorry for the quarterbacks in our conference because which corner are you going to go against? Which one are you going to challenge? Javius is that special guy. He's just I've never had that problem. The good Lord didn't bless me with those talents and skills, but to watch him play, when you see that number 2 jog off the sideline and go in the offensive huddle, we kind of reset ourselves in the radio booth getting ready for what might come.
And last thing for me, Austin Smith, last year he was a guy that was competing with Mason Garcia for the starting quarterback job. He was not the starter to start week 1, but, Mason Garcia goes down really early in the season opener against Louisville, and, he's out for the year. Austin Smith has to come in and, quarterback the Governors for the whole year. He stayed even when Chris Parson was coming in and, was competing with Chris Parson for that quarterback job. And, he's solidly the backup now, and we saw it especially in week 1 when he came in toward the end of the game when Chris got hurt and Austin was able to come in, put 10 points on the board. and kind of stretch that lead and secure that win. What does that say about Austin Smith, that in today's world of college athletics, that's a guy that's willing to stay and actually compete for a quarterback spot? And even if he doesn't win, he's willing to come in and help.
Quality. That's the first word. It's quality of human being, because you're right. His talents could have taken him anywhere. Knowing Chris was coming in, we knew Chris was coming in the spring. Austin had every available opportunity to jump into the portal. But Coach Ferris and Coach Quinn Billerman, the offense coordinator and quarterback coach, said, hey, stay here and compete. You saw what happened last year. You saw when Garcia went out against Louisville, it was your team. As I said, 2,300 yards and 15 touchdowns later a season ago, it was his team, and it was his ability to get us to those, a 4-win season, which wasn't what we wanted. But you go back and look at those final 3 games, we're in every game in the fourth quarter. It's a one-score game, and all our last 3 losses of the year, we just couldn't close it out. And that's why one of those major themes when you talk to Jeff Ferris is closing out games. But Austin's just a quality guy. And as you said, you mentioned middle. Came in late after Chris had a little bit of injury, went 3 for 7, got a rushing touchdown on the board as well. We saw him in the third quarter against Morehead State. I've never heard the man complain. Every time I've been fortunate enough to go out to campus or seen him, in some kind of setting around this team, he's always still comes up to me and daps me up and says hello, and always check on him, ask him how the knee's doing, because he had a little bit of a knee issue late in the year last year. So just quality. When you mention Austin Smith, the first word that comes to my head is quality young man, and that's irregardless of football. The quality of play and what he does on the football field speaks for itself. The young man himself, that's a future football coach, in my opinion, and I'll be a fan of Austin Smith no matter where he ends up.
Talking with Brian Reeves, Austin Peay football radio announcer here. Again, the Govs are off to a flying start. They're at 2-1. FCS coaches poll has them sitting at 20. They got a massive showdown at Abilene Christian, number 15, coming up this weekend. Brian, final question for me. While we went down memory lane earlier, it made me think, is the beer cheese dip at the Black Horse still as good as I remember it, partner?
It's better. It's better. Next time you make your way down, if Calvin doesn't pick up the tab, you give me a call, and I'll make sure you get a fresh batch. I got you, my friend.
I love that. Good stuff as always. Brian, it was so great to catch up with you. We know you always bring the wisdom and insight, and we certainly thank you for your time, my friend. Best of luck this weekend.
Anytime you guys need me and we'll talk a little Austin Peay, give me a yell. As always, let's go Peay.
That's it. Thank you, Brian Reeves. Again, our good friend up in Clarksville and Austin Peay radio announcer. And now I am officially going to be hungry for the next hour and a half thinking about some beer cheese dip at the Black Horse there, Calvin. You were nodding your head immediately, though. Brian gave us the thumbs up, too, but you were nodding your head in approval before it even escaped my mouth there.
Yeah, the beer cheese dip is legit. That was one of the first things I heard whenever I moved over here.
Same.
I got hooked up, and connected with all of my freelance people that I have over here, and that's the first thing all of them said was, let's go to the Black Horse and we'll get the beer cheese dip. And I think the servers there kind of assume that there's probably like 10 appetizers on the menu, but in everybody else's mind, the only one that exists is the beer cheese dip. They might as well just bring that stuff out to you like they bring the salsa out at the Mexican restaurant. They might as well just bring the chips and cheese out automatically.
Yep, I pulled it up, and it's listed first on the menu for good reason. And not surprised that you cultivated so many sources if you're bonding with them over the beer cheese dip there. So a smart move by you. Good pull from Calvin White up there at Main Street, Clarksville, and our co-host today. We are going to take a quick time out. When we come back, Calvin and I will close out hour number 1. We'll set the stage for tonight's MLB action. The Braves and Astros are in action. Matter of fact, one of them's already in action right now. We'll give you guys a scoreboard update and preview tonight's ball games on the other side of this quick break. You're watching Main Street Sports Today, where we are presented, as always, by TOA of Columbia.
Columbia Power and Water Systems is dedicated to bringing our customers reliable, local service. Whether you're turning on a light switch, your faucet, or streaming on TV, our dedicated team members from here in Murray County work every day to keep you on. If you need us, call us 931-388-4833 or visit cpws.com. CPWS, local service, local support.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
September 16th, 2007, kind of one for the history books, as the Braves start 3 players, count them up, 1, 2, 3, with the same surname. That would be third baseman Chipper Jones, left fielder Brandon Jones, center fielder Andrew Jones. The last time a team had achieved such a feat, or done such a feat, I guess, if you will, was the 1999 Pirates when they trotted out Emil Brown, Adrian Brown, and Brant Brown. The 2001 Pirates did not capitalize on the chance, but they did have Enrique Wilson, Jack Wilson, and Craig Wilson at their disposal. So the Pirates let us down in 2001, but the Braves in 2007. And that's not exactly a lineup of slappies there, Calvin. Chipper Jones, Brandon Jones, and Andrew Jones. So Chipper and Andrew holding the heavyweight there, but 3 Joneses in the lineup on this day in Braves history, 2007.
Yeah, I was a little too young for Andrew Jones, and obviously got to see the tail end of Chipper's career, and what ended up being a Hall of Fame career. We're still fighting to this day to get Andrew Jones in the Hall of Fame. But those were, I don't want to say some lean years for the Braves, but they weren't world beaters at that time. But obviously having some guys in the lineup like Chipper and Andrew, they're the guys that are cornerstones of your franchise. And obviously getting to watch Chipper Jones kind of toward the middle and end of his career was really fun.
Absolutely. So the 3 Joneses were featured in the lineup on this day in Braves history. From last night, it was the Braves defeating the Nationals in their series opener. It was no Joneses to speak of in terms of the runs for the Braves, but 11 runs on 16 hits. They defeat the Nationals. Quick scan of the box score. Didn't see this game. Spoiler. Nationals score in the bottom of the second, but then the Braves kind of just turned it on. 2 in the fourth. 3 in the 5th, 1 in the 6th, 2 in the 7th. So this game had really gotten out of hand. Got up to 9-3, beg pardon. But Atlanta scores a couple of times in the ninth there and wins it again, 11-3. We told you guys that they had already gotten underway with the first game of a doubleheader. Well, luck be a lady. The Braves defeat the Nationals 6-3. Suarez picking up the win. He improves to 2-0 with a 2.51 ERA now. Iglesias picking up a save as the Braves, similar script to last night, Calvin. How about this? The Nationals score 2 runs in the second, just like last night, but then the Braves club out 5 runs in the 4th. That's really all they need. Both teams trading runs in the 8th inning, so 6-3 is your final in that first game today. And just when you, if you're hankering for more sub 500 baseball, you get the Nationals and Braves, the encore tonight, as Chris Sale will head against Mackenzie Gore. Good pitching matchup between 2 pitchers that have awful records, Calvin. 5-5. We documented the injury issues, obviously, for Sale, but a 5-5 record. But Mackenzie Gore is a much better pitcher, I think a lot of folks would anticipate, than his 5-14 record when those 2 teams will get it on at 5:45 tonight.
Yeah, this is why we don't acknowledge pitcher records when it comes to talent level. But, only about 10 or 11 games left in the regular season before the playoffs start. So It'll be good. It would be good to see for the Braves to pick up as many wins as they can here toward the stretch. Now they've got Washington and I don't remember who their last series or their last couple series of the year are, but I don't think they're against teams that are too great. But the Braves haven't been too great this year either. So Braves pick up what I believe to be win number 69, so going for number 70 in the back half of the doubleheader. So see how many wins the Braves can pick up toward the tail stretch of the regular season.
Chance to close it out at least with a little shred of dignity. Speaking of dignity, the Astros, Mo and I talked about it yesterday, Calvin, kind of backs against the wall a little bit for the first time. They've been playing with fire for the last couple of weeks, and every time it looked like they might give away their division lead that they've had for the last couple of months, the Mariners would lose. Well, finally, the right recipe came to fruition, and Houston found itself trailing, entering a massive series last night, opening versus the Rangers. Good news, they won the series, won the game 6-3. Bad news, Jordan Alvarez, who's been battling injuries just like a lot of the team has all season long, coming across home plate, sprains his ankle. One of those videos that you don't probably want to watch a ton of times because right when he steps on home plate, that ankle just kind of buckles right there. But he's being evaluated for an MRI. So kind of a this is why we can't have nice things type situation for my beloved Astros there, Calvin, as they win the game, a much-needed win, but suffer a potential catastrophic loss. MRI results pending today.
Yeah, they've been without Jordan Alvarez for what feels like most of the year. And was it a non-contact thing? Like I wasn't a play at the plate?
I do think there was a potential play at the plate, but he didn't slide, and he's running across. And I had no idea what the actual extent of the injury was. And so when I first see the video, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he shredded his knee, because there was even kind of a small warning saying, hey, this is kind of gross. In the grand scheme of things, looks like it might be as good as it could have been because, yeah, if he'd have torn his ACL or a real bad Achilles injury, you're talking about a massive amount of time. Maybe this time next year we're talking about him coming back. But tweaking his ankle on a somewhat, play at the plate, beat out the throw, scored the run, etc. But Houston in trouble. That win last night got them within half a game of Seattle and gave them a little breathing room as the Rangers are now 3.5 back in the division. But at what cost will be the final question that we're trying to answer here.
Yeah, quick Google search says he sprained his left ankle. He left the game in a walking boot and on crutches. He is scheduled to have an MRI today to determine the extent of it. But, obviously they don't want to go. They don't want to go at all without Jordan Alvarez if they don't have to. But, if they can, if it does end up being a longer term injury and they can make a deeper run in the playoffs, maybe they can hope to get him back toward the stretch of that playoff run.
Yeah, tough situation as Jordan Alvarez again, as Calvin had mentioned. The Astros been kind of just begging and waiting for him more than anybody really, even more so than some of their pitchers, just trying to get him back. But his ankle injury, this story on The Athletic, it sums it up best. His ankle sprain will once again test their resiliency. And my expectations, if they don't have a fully healthy lineup, they definitely, in my opinion, don't have a shot to make a major run at a World Series. If they have a fully healthy lineup, which they clearly won't, fully healthy at least at this point, I don't necessarily like their chances to go very far if they even are fortunate enough to get into the postseason. But that's showbiz, baby, right, Calvin? And as a result, we'll kind of see how things play out. Real quickly before we close the first hour here, Calvin, anything else of Major League Baseball news or notes that has jumped out to you in the last 48 hours?
I don't believe so. But, we've talked a lot about the Brewers over the course of the season. It'll be interesting to see if this is the year that the Brewers can, make some postseason noise. It feels like, for the last couple of years, they've either been at the top or won that division and just haven't been able to make some noise in the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to watch the Brewers. I'll be interested to see, obviously we're not going to find out who wins for a while, but I'll be interested to see who ends up winning the American League MVP. Aaron Judge missed some time with injury, and Cal Raleigh kind of, had a cold stretch there for a while. But obviously, what Cal Raleigh's doing, especially from the catcher position, kind of adds a little bit more value to what he's doing. But Judge is. I heard somebody say it the other day. If Aaron Judge plays his whole career as a Yankee, he probably ends up a top 5 Yankee. And then, not really paying attention because we know who's going to win the National League MVP. And I talked about this with David last week. There's only one player in the history of Major League Baseball who's won more than 4 MVPs, and it's Barry Bonds. And Shohei Ohtani is about to win his 4th MVP in 5 years.
Guy is incredible. He's going to be fun to watch. He's not on the level of Judge, obviously, but he's one of those guys. They really would they're banking on him, not only leading them into the postseason, but they want him being a massive, massive factor for yet another championship. It's one of those franchises that that's the standard. And if you're not winning it every single year, it doesn't matter if you won it the year before, it doesn't matter how many you won prior. It's all about the current moment. Speaking of Ohtani, he will go tonight. Big series versus the Phillies. Him and Sanchez will be twirling for their respective teams. That's a fun one on TBS tonight at 9:10 p.m. That tips us into the 3 o'clock hour. That means we're just a hair tardy for our top of the hour break. When we come back, we will be one moment closer to talking with our good friend, MTSU Blue Raider voice Chip Walters is in the green room, folks. He will be with us on the other side of this timeout here on Main Street Sports Today, where we're presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
Is your internet slowing you down? It's time for an upgrade. Whether you're at home, working from your home office, or at your business, it's time to unleash the speed you need with speeds up to 1 gig at CPWS for as low as $70 a month. Give us a call, 931-375-7777. Local service, local support, CPWS.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Welcome back, gang, and welcome in hour number 2 of Main Street Sports Today. We are off and we are running, presented as always by our friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, alongside Calvin White, our producer Mark Rogers, Wayne Neely saying hello. Ladies and gentlemen, every Tuesday at around this time, the top of the 3 o'clock hour, it's our good friend, and it's our privilege every week to welcome in Choose Chip on social media. You guys know him, however, as the Blue Raider voice. He's Chip Walters. Good afternoon, Chip.
How are you?
We are great. We are great.
I have to say the bump music matches your mustache. today?
It's 70s era ish. I've trimmed up a little bit, so
There you go. All
the
right.
bad part is, Chip, when you grow the stash out, now I'm scared to shave it because I'm gonna be walking around like Casper. I'm gonna have a bad tan line after having it for so long.
Didn't even think of that. I've done only facial hair. One time I did no shave November, and what was on my face looked more like a possum than anything else. Same coloring.
Can you provide pictures of that by chance, or is that
No? I think they've all been deleted as far as I'm concerned.
we can make that your new intro picture when we bring you
Oh
in.
yeah,
Commercial.
I'm sure you could.
Yeah, we're investigating.
I'd have to pay Mark to make sure that didn't happen.
We're investigative journalists, Chip, so maybe we can, start digging. But you might have given us a little bit of a homework assignment. Hey, Chip, before we go any further, partner, happy flight. We love happy flights, and you guys had a good one coming back from Nevada. That was a game I will admit, get to watch, and I see the score is 13-0, and I'm thinking, oh, man, it doesn't look good for the Blue Raiders. And then, poof, in the blink of an eye, they win a squeaker, 14-13.
Well, it did. It came down to the last. The last two possessions by both teams had a lot to do. Had everything to do with the outcome. Nevada's last two possessions were missed field goals. Middle's last two possessions were touchdowns. And when Middle got the ball with 10:29 to play after a Jawan Gaston interception, it was right then. I was, Joe and I were talking on the air. I said, Joe, this may sound crazy, but I think they're still in this thing. And turns out, that you kept looking at that point total of 13 and said, that can be had. You're only two plays away really from being ahead in the ball game, and that's exactly how it turned out. Jawan Gaston made a couple of huge defensive plays, getting two interceptions, one on like the second play of the second half. He got one second or third play that stopped a drive after Nevada had broken off a big chunk play and got down close. He made an interception at the goal line. Then the other, with 10:29 to play, came at about the 40-yard line or so, gave Middle good field position, and led to a touchdown drive where Nick Vattiato hit Najee Cox. Middle got the ball back after a missed field goal with just over 2 minutes to play, drove it down again, and then got it to the 5-yard line where Vattiato, the call was an empty backfield, 5 wides, basically spread all the way across the field, which – it's kind of been a bread and butter short yardage play for Middle in the past, because you've got to honor all of those receivers. And really, if Nick can get a one block, he's got an opportunity to run it into the end zone on a quarterback draw. And that's exactly what happened. And it gave, it took it down to 21 seconds, which, as it turned out, Nevada came back, ran 3 plays, got it to a point where they could kick an attempt, a 56.5-yard field goal attempt that was long enough but was wide. And good guys leave with a win. And you're right, it did made for a happy locker room, made for a happy flight home. And although the Blue Raiders got home in the wee hours of the morning, it was still nice to come back with a win.
Chip, nice to come back with a win. And, this is kind of a lazy question, but, man, what does this do now for the confidence levels of MTSU, a team that we maybe had high hopes for starting the year, but it obviously gotten off to a very slow start?
Well, and I don't think that's a lazy question at all, because, I firmly believe that, winning that football game was a big deal. I think how they won that football game is an even bigger deal.
Yeah.
And when you start looking at how does that affect you confidence wise, it shows you a lot of things that you're never out of it. It proved to his teammates that Nick Vattiato was not going to give up, and for them to, he's going to drag you along with him and put you on his back. His 25th 200-yard game, he moved from 4th to 2nd on the all-time yardage list. He's now over 8,000 yards in his career, and that's a guy whose confidence was kind of shot after the Austin Peay game, and for good reason. But he bounced back, worked hard, and set an example for everybody else. So I do think there is something on how you go about what you do, and and the defense played. When you give up 13, that's you've played pretty much good enough to win in this era of college football.
Chip, kind of looking at the rushing numbers, when you take out the losses from the 4 sacks Nick Vattiato took, Blue Raiders ran for 137 yards. That's still not a world-beating game on the ground, but it was much better than the first 2 weeks. Nick still had to throw it 44 times, but was this kind of an example of the run game kind of helping open up the pass attack a little bit?
I think there's something to that. There was one big chunk play in there from Jaquel Middlebrook on a big run, but they were able to do enough. And I'm like you. I'd love to see that net out somewhere between 130 and 150, per game. You look over the years that as we get ready to go into Conference USA play, Middle during its time in Conference USA has averaged about 155 to 60 yards rushing per game. So we're not quite into the conference yet, but you play Marshall this week, which feels like a conference game because you've been in a league with them for so long, and now they're in the Sun Belt. So let's kind of get in that mode this week because you've got 3 right out of the gate, 3 that you kind of look at on the schedule and say, hey, there's some meat on the bone right here after the win on the road at Nevada. If you can come home and win homecoming this week, then you kind of look back and say, okay, well, you're almost probably where a lot of people thought you were going to be from a record standpoint. Maybe not necessarily how you got there, but if I think a lot of people would have looked at the schedule and said, hey, can they be 2-2 after the first 4, get a break, maybe 3-1. And then there's a lot of folks that looked at it and said, man, they may be 1-3, and they still could be. But I think they will come into this week with a great deal of confidence coming back home. And I think really wanting to win back not only their own confidence, but win back the confidence of the fans at home after going on the road and, playing pretty well, in spots against Wisconsin, played really well for 2.5 quarters. And then to come and pull one out of the fire at Nevada, I think the next step is come home, put a complete 60 minutes together and play well at home.
Talking with Chip Walters, the MTSU play-by-play voice, as Choose Chip is his social media handle. Calvin, a little more?
Yeah, Chip, Jawan Gaston was, he's Conference Defensive Player of the Week this week. 2 interceptions. He's the first Blue Raider to have multiple interceptions in a game since DeCorian Patterson, 3 years ago. Obviously he was important in that win over Nevada, 2 interceptions, 1 that stopped the scoring drive, like you said, but how important has he been in a secondary that, has, frankly got shredded against Austin Peay, and then, Wisconsin didn't do it as much, but, after week 1, after the first 2 weeks, the secondary looks like it's improved a little bit.
Well, and part of that was, experience. The other was John House was back this week after being gone for a couple of weeks. So, all of that helped. And, and the thing is, in the short time I've had to get to know Gaston, he's a guy that is supremely confident. And talking to Derek Mason last night on his radio show, he talked about Jawan being one of those guys who just kind of knows where to be and has good football instincts. You look at the 2 interceptions, the one at the goal line, he just basically stared down the quarterback and jumped the route right at the goal line, or actually 2 yards deep, and decided to bring it out when I'm sure the entire coaching staff was yelling, "Get down, get down, get down," in the end zone. But he brought it out and got it out past the 30. And then the other one was on a ricochet. But as Derek and I were talking about it last night, he kind of saw what was coming and got himself in position like a good rebounder does in basketball when they they can see a shot go up and have an idea which way it's going to go. He kind of got himself in position. That ball got tipped up in the air and I mean, just literally hit him in the face. So he was able to get that, and that really, opened the floodgates for Middle's offense to really get rolling. And one of the other great stats about the final drive of the game for Middle, where they ended up getting the second touchdown, which was the Vadiato run. On that drive, Nick had completions to 5 different receivers on that drive, which, that in itself had to have Nevada's secondary kind of on its heels.
Absolutely. And Chip, I found this interesting. Obviously, it was the first meeting. 2 questions, I guess. Number one, it was the first meeting. Is there a return meeting already scheduled between these 2 teams?
There is, next year. It'll be in Murfreesboro. And interestingly enough, Nevada will be on a plane that will land in Nashville this Friday because they play in Bowling Green on Saturday against Western Kentucky.
That was my very next question is what sort of – did they have a weird CUSA, Middle Tennessee, Western scheduling premonition, or how did that come about?
Just happened. It just worked out that way. And so, that kind of – it just kind of worked out. And, it'll be interesting to see what Nevada does this week because they changed their starting quarterback last week. They went with A.J. Bianco instead of Chubba Purdy, brought Purdy in, and he threw a 47-yard touchdown pass on his first play. And then in the second half, Middle intercepted him twice and did a good job of keeping him hemmed up and not letting him get loose with the run. That's what Western's going to have to do because if Purdy starts or plays, he is much more dangerous with his legs than he is with his arm.
Chip, with that being said, 4 weeks have transpired since, we kind of talked about preseason, but the schedule was setting up nicely, and we talked about one of those key games was this Marshall game. Obviously, a lot discussed about their coaching turnover and the bowl cancellation last year, and this might be a prime opportunity for Middle at home to get them. But you made an interesting comment earlier when you said, yeah, this is going to have conference game feels, it sounds like, to it when they kick it off Saturday night.
Well, and Marshall and Middle are, again, in a little bit in the same boat. The Herd lost their first 2 games of the year, including one that I think was a kind of a shocker to them, and that being the game against Missouri State, who's a brand new member of Conference USA this year, moving up from the FCS ranks. They were able to get their first win last week. They handled Eastern Kentucky pretty handily there in Huntington. So they come on the road. They're kind of figuring themselves out with new coach, a lot of new players, and from what we understand, they'll play multiple quarterbacks in this game. So that's something that kind of by accident Middle found out about last week and how to go about that because they didn't necessarily expect A.J. Bianco to start. But they saw in warm-ups that it was probably going to happen. And now here you are in the next week. And I think part of your coaching points are that, hey, you've already seen this. You've already done this. You've had to go against multiple quarterbacks in the same game. And while that was not necessarily the expectation last week, it is this week. And we'll just have to see how they attack it.
Chip, you also kind of teased it a little bit, but a big weekend in addition to just the festivities that are going to be going on the field Saturday night.
That's right. This weekend, it's homecoming. I'm sure we'll look for Calvin to be there at the parade on Saturday morning. We'll have the good parade wave. And one of the real fun things I get to do every year is the parade coverage at the Mixer on Middle. It's the big party for the homecoming parade, and we also do it on streaming video. And I always have a partner that helps me out, and we draft somebody every year. And this year, Forrest Sanders, middle alum from News Channel 5, 38-time Emmy Award winner, will be there with me. And so we'll do that at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, and then get over to the football game that afternoon or that evening. But on Friday night, we have the 50th induction ceremony of the Blue Raider Hall of Fame, and 6 new members will go in as part of the class of 2025, including Ashley Adams, volleyball player who captained a squad that went to 3 NCAA tournaments. Kevin Byard, now with the Chicago Bears. Ann Dudley, who was a women's track and field star 2009 to 2013. Warren Kidd, the big cat from men's basketball, the first 1,000-point, 1,000-rebound guy in middle history. Garth Petrelli, who was Mr. Automatic with the toe in football, 1991 to 94, played on some really good teams. And Jerry Singleton from men's track and field, 1965 to 69. He was a pioneer, being that he was the first African-American scholarship athlete at Middle Tennessee. And those 6 will be inducted on Saturday or Friday evening in the SRM Concrete Club.
Chip, kind of moving over to soccer. We talked about their hot start whenever they rattled off 3 or 4 to start the year, but up until Sunday hadn't won since August 31st, won 2-0 over Evansville. Just what kind of led them to kind of get back in the groove and pick up a win after they got shut out against Lipscomb Vandy and then tied with Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, I think they got it. It appears to me that they got off to a faster start. I think Aston, they wanted to really apply pressure early on Evansville, and they did just that. They scored 8 minutes into the game, then got a second goal at the 39-34 mark, and from there just played good defense. They've gotten really good goalkeeping all season long, and so that was able to hold up. Middle had 6 shots on goal, 13 total shots. Evansville had 8 total shots, but only 2 were on goal, and so that made life a little bit easier. Ella Sellers, she was the goalkeeper in this game against Evansville, and so the defense in front of her did a pretty good job providing a lot of traffic, and keeping the eyes of the Evansville shooters pretty busy with not knowing exactly what was going on there. So that was a big win on the road. Now they come back. They'll open conference play against Jacksonville State Sunday. That'll be at the Dean Hayes Track and Soccer Stadium. So being, kind of at 5 wins right now, 5-3-2 after the first, 10 games. Get into conference play and maybe keep that momentum going with a good home match.
Be nice to get a little mojo going, Chip. They're not the only ones though that are looking for some, or maybe perhaps have found some. Sounds like volleyball's playing well yet again.
3 weekends in a row. They've won two of their 3 matches in 3 different tournaments this past weekend. Middle won 2 out of 3, and the final of those was on Sunday or Saturday rather against Southern Indiana. This was at the Miami of Ohio event, and the Blue Raiders had 2 players that made the all-tournament team. Reagan Durbin and Peyton Deidesheimer both made the all-tournament team. So, they've been pretty consistent in the way that they've gone about their business, and now we'll turn around and we'll go to Blacksburg, Virginia. We'll take on Virginia Tech along with Radford, and that will be That'll start actually Thursday. Before the weekend, they'll play in that event up in Blacksburg. So, new coach Alexa Keckler has I think really done a good job of keeping her team that has 16 new players, as a matter of fact, on the roster. She's done a really nice job of keeping them all focused on what they're doing. Installed a system that obviously they have taken to very well, and it won't be long before they're in conference play as well here in just a couple of weeks.
Chip, we talked about this a little bit with Brian Reeves when he was on here earlier. Obviously, football is different than volleyball, but we kind of talked about how Austin Peay's got 70-something new players on the football team and how they were able to gel so quickly and turn up and post performances like they have so far. But we talk about volleyball winning. I like the way volleyball is winning. Outside of the sets or the games that they've won, only one team has won more than one set on them. And so, obviously it's 16 players compared to 70, but and a new head coach. But how is the team kind of, gelled so quickly that they're able to, they're already almost halfway to the last year's win mark?
I know they've been off to a really good start. And like you said, of their 6 wins, 5 of them have been 3-1. I don't have the answer there. I've got to defer a lot there to Coach Keckler. She came in. The thing is, when you're around them in practice or games, there's no question who's in charge. She is a stern, very much in charge head coach, but also she's put together a group of players and has built a culture that they're all pulling for each other, and there's something to be said for that. And whatever she's doing, you want to kind of bottle it up and keep doing that, because they're the way they're playing right now, they're going to have a shot to put themselves in a good position in the conference. Western Kentucky is going to be the prohibitive favorite in the league again. They're going to be a top 25 potentially. So, I think one thing that Coach Keckler understands too, and was probably mentioned to her more than once during her interview process, that the importance of being in getting better and knowing that Western Kentucky's the target. I think I think she understands that, and that's going to be her goal, is to get where they are and try to be the dominant club in this conference.
Talking with Chip Walters, all things MTSU. The Blue Raider voice joins us each and every single Tuesday. Chip, one or two that I wanted to get before we close out of here. I don't know what your personal best times are in the 5K and 8K, but I can certainly tell you that I'm not even sniffing some of the numbers that were put up by 2 of our student athletes at MTSU. Not 1, but 2 Conference Player of the Week awards for some of our cross-country folks.
That's right. Alan Kiplagat and Faith Niathi were named Conference USA Student Athletes of the Week. Kiplagat in the Southern Showcase finished 3rd out of 459 runners with a time in an 8K 23:22.1. Niathi ran in a 5K. She finished 3rd out of 481 runners with a time of 16 minutes, 35.2 seconds. So both of them were outstanding, and both were very good the week before in the Memphis Twilight Classic. As a matter of fact, Faith Niathi was the individual winner in that event. They will both be continuing in Louisville in the Louisville Classic on October 4th. But the pipeline to Ghana has continued. Keith Roman and the crew with Middle Tennessee Track, Dean Hayes had it going for so long, and they've done a really good job of continuing that. And the Alan Kiplagat has just been a stud in cross country and distance running since he got to middle, and Faith Niathi has been just as good on the women's side. So they've both helped be part of team championships, and nice to see them get their individual honors.
Yeah, get some individual kudos, celebrate the team success as well. Chip, if I didn't know any better, I'd say this is an everything school we're talking about here in terms of the Blue Raiders.
Well, that you ask Chris Massaro, that's his goal. He wants to be good across the board, and that's what you want to be. You're also getting ready for basketball season on both sides coming up. So, it was a good weekend across the board, but it's always, what have you done for me lately? And you're only you're getting ready to be judged again as you come out this weekend against Marshall. Again, 6:00 kickoff, homecoming, and there's obviously good seats available. So go BlueRaiders.com/tickets, and that's where you can find them.
I will do a service to the MTSU faithful, Chip. Last year I went to homecoming, and it was not pleasant, so I'm going to pass on homecoming this year in hopes of good vibes for everybody else. So it's not that I don't love anybody less. I'm just sacrificing for the greater good by not attending this weekend.
Well, we appreciate your sacrifice, and we'll hopefully it'll be a good homecoming for all the alums coming back this weekend.
Absolutely. I will be watching and listening this weekend, though, so looking forward to it. Chip, before we get out of here, Producer Mark, we told you Calvin and I are great investigative journalists, but Producer Mark's the one that really has got the goods, and he scoured the internet, and, man, he did it yet again. What do you got for us, Mark?
Here we go. Oh, there it is.
You described it perfectly, Chip. It's the possum-looking facial hair of Chip Walters. So
there you go. Go.
It sounds like he didn't even have to dig very hard, but he might have had to go to ChatGPT for for one. So
very well could have.
Well done.
I'll have to send him a couple that I've done of our radio crew. That I'll send those to him for maybe next week. That obviously I had some downtime and started playing with Microsoft Copilot one day. So.
I love it. Chip, speaking of co-pilots, we're glad that you made it back safely from your trip. We look forward to catching up with you next week, partner.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you very much. That is Chip Walters. Joins us each and every single Tuesday, except when he doesn't, here on Main Street Sports Today. Good stuff from Chip. Good stuff from Calvin. Good stuff from Producer Mark. Didn't even have to dig very hard on the internet to find that picture of Chip with his raccoon beard there. He wasn't really lying. Or it was a possum beard, excuse me. I don't want to have the PETA folks coming after me there for misidentifying, so I apologize. Calvin and I are going to take a quick break. We still got a few little odds and ends to wrap up here. We'll do that on the other side of this timeout. We'll get into the grab bag, and then we will close the show with Top 5 Tuesday, where Calvin and I will tell you our top 5 favorite sports cathedrals, our sports stadiums that are on our bucket list. We haven't been to them yet, but we really want to. Calvin and I will break that down when we come back. First, the grab bag on the other side of this timeout, presented as always by TOA of Columbia. You are watching Main Street Sports Today.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Hour number 2, Main Street Sports Today, presented by our friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. That is Calvin White. Wade Neely here. Our producer, Mark Rogers, making a magic happen back behind the glass. Quick housekeeping. Tomorrow, Calvin and David Wilson will be your co-hosts. David and Mo set to tangle on Thursday. And then yours truly and Mo will close it out on Main Street Sports Today. Big week, big show. Big segment, Calvin. We dip into the grab bag. I always like to pick your brain. What jumped out to you, if anything? I'm looking out my window, and producer Mark told us in the pre-show that we would have some rain maybe in the forecast. It's rained a little bit here, but there was no rain, and there was certainly no lightning Friday night, which meant we got to get in a full, nice week of high school football. Give us an update on some of your squads from the week.
Yeah, probably the biggest thing that jumped out to me is, last year – Springfield finished the regular season, I believe, 5-5, and just torched their way to the Class 5A state semifinals. And coming into this year, they kind of raised the expectation after making the semifinal run after a mediocre regular season. And Springfield's 4-0 right now. They gave up 35 points on Friday, and they won by 20. Their quarterback, Kason Woodson, he was 14 for 18 for a little over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jermaine Cobbins, who's the number 2 player in the state right now for his class of 2028. He had, I think, 6 catches for a little under 130 and a touchdown. And then, they scored 55 points without their top running back. Jaden Hurst did not play. Lamarius Dowling kind of took over at that main running back spot. He ran for about 130 and a couple scores. White House Heritage gutted out a 15-12 win over White House. White House one classification bigger than Heritage. Heritage pulled out a 15-12 win after.
Hey, real quick, Calvin, how much set the stage for us? Mo and I were talking about that game last week. I could be wrong. How much of a rivalry, can you even put into words just how much those schools maybe really don't care for each other?
Well, it's the first time. Last Friday was the first time they had played since 2022. Okay. So, Scott Murray, who's the head coach at White House Heritage, he's never coached in the rivalry. He's not from White House. So he told me after the game he had no idea how big it was until, the week of.
Yeah.
And, White House had won the last 2 games that they had played. And so, White House came in 1-2. Heritage was coming in 2-1. And, Xavier Murray, who was an all-state player last year, quarterback for White House Heritage, he only completed 8 passes and didn't throw a touchdown. So White House turned Heritage into a one-dimensional offense, but Heritage running back Cale Hunt went for about 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. And outside of Heritage's 2 scoring drives, none of their offensive drives lasted longer than 4 or 5 plays. And so their 2 scoring drives, they basically marched it down the field 10, 15 plays, took a bunch of time off the clock, and basically took it out of White House's offense's hands. They went up 7-0. And then White House blocked a punt, returned it for a touchdown, missed the extra point, so they were down 7-6. And then White House scored again just before the half. They had a big big punt return that set them up. They started the drive right at midfield, I want to say. And then quarterback Jaden Schultz ran it in with about 10 or 15 seconds left in the half. They missed the extra point again, so they went up 13-7 at halftime. And then Cale Hunt scored his second touchdown late in the third quarter to put them up 15-12 after they went for 2 and got it. And so there were no points in the fourth quarter, but White House got the ball back after a punt with right at 2 minutes left. And they started, I want to say, on their own 10 or 20,
Mm-hmm.
and they drove it about 60 yards in 2 minutes and had one play to win it with 4 seconds left from about the 25. Jaden Schultz throws it toward the back of the end zone for Easton Biggs, and Easton Biggs is probably a big toe from being in bounds. There's a ref right there. They call him out of bounds, and
Yeah.
he caught the ball too, like caught it clean over 2 or 3 Heritage defenders, but he was about a foot from being in bounds. So all the referees are right there running and calling him out of bounds, and you see it in every football game. One team is like throwing up the touchdown sign, and the other's like waving their hands to say it's no good. They call it no good. Heritage comes out with a 15-12 win.
Crazy turn of events, and that was one. I'm glad you shared some insight. I love the fact that the coach comes out at the end. He's like, I didn't necessarily know what to expect, but not a lot of love lost between some of them. We'll get into kind of a preview more as this week kind of unfolds. But man, I'm going to whisper this, Calvin, but this is week 5. We're already approaching the halfway mark of the high school football season. And you're starting to see a little R next to those teams on their schedules. A lot of region games cranking up, so the intensity meter gets dialed up even more as we head down the second half stretch coming up beginning this week. Speaking of big league games, Calvin, and speaking of big-time environments, first and foremost, did you have any friends, family, loved ones that made the trip to Knoxville this weekend for the UT Georgia game?
I'm sure I had some friends somewhere, but nobody that gave me insight on the game. Obviously, heartbreaker for the Vols. I'm sure we will maybe have Caleb Giroux on the show again tomorrow, so he can kind of talk us through that. But we were watching the end of it up in the press box at Forterra Stadium, about midway through the first quarter of the Austin Peay game. And, they've always got the Tennessee game on the TV until it's time to flip over to Austin Peay.
Mm-hmm.
But, everybody that was, that there were some people that work in the sports information department at Austin Peay that were, rooting for the Vols a little bit. And so, it was a little bit of heartbreak up in the press box when the kicker pulled the field goal and they went to overtime. Just about everybody knew that Georgia doesn't give you second chances. So if you're going to overtime with Georgia after you had a chance to win it, you're probably not going to come out of that thing with a win.
Yeah, and the reason I asked, though, about if you had any folks that went to the game, because the capacity crowd, 101,915, some of them may have not necessarily had a pleasant experience getting into the stadium, so much so that UT Athletic Director Danny White issued a public apology on social media Sunday. And I saw this tweet, but because it's Twitter and it's kind of a cesspool now, I just immediately thought that maybe it was a troll account or that I was kind of getting punked in some capacity. But turns out this was a real deal apology from the man himself, Danny White, basically apologizing, saying that due to ongoing renovations, especially around Gate 9 and the Truly Plaza, sounds like a lot of folks, the capacity was basically triple the amount that they could hold. So fans were slow to get in, depending on where you were seated or where you entered on Saturday. So a crowd of 101,915. Game days there. Pat McAfee standing up, getting the crowd whipped into a frenzy. But it sounds like it was not necessarily a great experience for some. White's apology mentions all of the specific details, talking about the expanded concourse again around Gate 9 and Truly Plaza, said that they were, quote, hoping to make ingress much better, and they will, but our plan was obviously not effective today. It wasn't for a lack of effort. Our staff and campus partners have been working hard on that all off-season. It's been proven difficult to predict how traffic will flow with the new gates given our tight footprint. That's not an excuse. We missed the mark. That's on me. So, Calvin, I know there's no way to simulate this, and with all due respect to ETSU, especially our good friend Heather Williams, who will be on the show tomorrow, but it's a different tune when you maybe don't get in the stadium on time to watch ETSU when they had their home opener on September 6th than when you're trying to scurry to get into the building to try and watch the Vols take on a top 10 team in Georgia.
Yeah, that I can remember, I don't think I've ever been to a sporting event that had this many people at it. in a building of that capacity. But, I saw where somebody said that, there were a lot of people that didn't even get to their seats until about midway through the first quarter. So obviously that would be annoying if I was in their shoes. And then, obviously the game's not decided in the first quarter a lot of times, but
there's a hell of a lot of points scored in the first quarter, though.
But this is also kind of the middle-aged man in me coming out. If I can't even get to my seat until halfway through the first quarter because of how many people are there, what is traffic going to look like after the game? I saw one of those posts too where, there were a lot of people saying that they were in their car in the line trying to leave the stadium, and they just sat there in the same spot for like 2 hours, which sounds worse than trying to get in the game.
Yeah, that 100%. That to me is the more nightmare situation than those. But Danny White has apologized. Tennessee is taking on UAB at 11:45. I would imagine it's going to be a little easier to get in and out on Saturday. But they still have home games versus Arkansas, Oklahoma, and who knows what that Vanderbilt home game might look like in late November if things kind of continue for both of the teams the way they have thus far. But Danny White, the big man himself, kind of taken to socials to put that out there. So you weren't the only ones, Vols fans, for those that did suffer. Danny White said he felt your pain and hopefully trying to make it better. Speaking of feeling pain, didn't mean to go with that for the segue, but we'll let it ride, Calvin. A big injury for the Los Angeles Rams. They came into Nissan Stadium. They roughed up the Titans, but it came at a cost. But this is not your normal injury. This is almost a Wild and Wacky Wednesday type vibe here because it turns out that Sean McVay, yes, the head coach for the Los Angeles Rams, revealed to the Associated Press yesterday that he tore his plantar fascia during the game. Pulled up awkwardly while making a timeout motion. Said the foot is good, quote, but I did tear my plantar fascia. So it's a good thing because I guess it allows you to heal a little faster. I was being dramatic, limping around toward the end of the game, but the MRI confirmed that I did tear that. I've never torn my plantar fascia, but I have certainly had issues with it, Calvin, and that is a pain I don't know that I wish on anybody. And so even though his team got the win, the Rams head coach there dealing with some injury, the woes of himself coming out of the game Sunday.
Yeah, luckily he's not on the field playing. Maybe we can, see him on the sideline in one of those scooters that they give you when you're in a walking boot. We'll, he'll have to pedal himself and have his play chart right there available.
That's not a bad idea. He will still have the mental chops to be going forth with the shot. But yeah, that is excruciating stuff. And again, I didn't even tear mine. I just had run-of-the-mill, just kind of a strain years ago. Get good running shoes, folks. Blaine Keller, our resident running fiend, will attest to that. But I paid the price for not running in running shoes years and years ago. Calvin, more NFL news and notes. It's not every day. I guess maybe if you're a Cowboys fan, you're kind of used to it at this point. But it's not every day you can just trot out and basically bank on a 64-yard field goal. But when the Cowboys tied the game up at the end of regulation, they called a running play on third down to set up Brandon Aubrey, and they're running the ball right near midfield. They're not going for a 20-yard chunk play through the air. They're just a simple 5-6-yard run to get them a little closer. And then Aubrey comes out, boots the 64-yarder, makes a little bit shorter field goal to win it in overtime. But that kind of has gotten the question wondering, and Jerry Jones has said as much. For all the jokes and all of the punchlines about the Cowboys and being cheap and not paying Micah Parsons, Jerry Jones has now been asked, hey, when is an extension coming for your kicker? Jones has revealed on his radio show yesterday, quote, his extension is certainly coming. We'll be looking at that. Probably have had communication since the kick. I'm not necessarily sure what that line means, but maybe I assume he meant we've probably had some communications, but he's certainly in the future. It would be very Dallas-like if you realize finally you have the weapon of all weapons, Calvin, only to somehow see him get away.
Yeah, and what's it say that your owner's openly coming out and saying he's going to pay the kicker, but not one of the best defensive players in the NFL. Michael Parsons is a Green Bay Packer just because Jerry Jones was cheap, but he's going to go out and pay a kicker.
That's the other part of this headline, right? Is, on one hand, it would be great business to lock him up, obviously, but it would be classic Cowboys and oh so comical. Yes, we're going to let a generational defensive player walk. I mean, you can make the case, though. Aubrey, was a former computer software sales guy or former insurance sales guy when he was out of football briefly. But this dude is just nails for the Cowboys. But apparently, his extension is coming, at least according to Jerry Jones. So, a couple NFL headlines. We successfully, yet another grab bag where we go preps to pros. Calvin's got the range, folks, so we always like to pull that off when we can on our Tuesday episodes. That brings us to our final break. That brings us up to Top 5 Tuesday. On the other side of this timeout, Calvin and I are going to give you our 5 stadiums across all sports. Our top 5 stadiums that are on our sports bucket list. You're not going to want to miss this, folks. It's Top 5 Tuesday as we close out this episode of Main Street Sports Today, presented by TOA of Columbia.
Being in Tennessee, we wanted to try to keep it as local as possible, so we have an entire section of our menu that is just dedicated to local whiskeys like Uncle Nearest, Jack Daniels, of course, George Dickel, Nelson Brothers, Greenbrier Whiskey, and all of our taps are all local. From 2 o'clock until midnight, we've got food every day for you guys. A good handful of appetizers, some entrees, and a couple salads and things like that. My name is Ethan Kanata. Please come down and see us at the Pick Lobby Bar here at the Omni in Nashville.
There's a line that links us all. Most of the time, we don't even think about it. But it's everywhere. Illuminating our neighborhoods, empowering our businesses, and helping us to recharge. Whether it comes from our grids, the sun, or a kind heart, we believe in the power of good energy. And as your family and region continue to grow, you can trust that we'll always be there for you. Middle Tennessee Electric, bringing good energy.
Welcome back, gang. Final segment here on Top 5 Tuesday. It's been a fun couple hours hanging out with you guys, hanging out with Calvin White, part of our Main Street Media team, and also our producer, Mark Rogers. I'm Wade Neely saying happy Tuesday. A little cloudy here in downtown Nashville, but we're going to close out the show in style and cruise on in to the rest of the afternoon. Before we go any further, folks, it is Top 5 Tuesday, and Calvin and I are chomping at the bit to debate our top 5 sports bucket list stadiums we want to get to. But before we tap into that, I want to remind you that each and every single Top 5 Tuesday is brought to you by our friends at Columbia Power and Water. Are you tired of buffering and slow internet speeds? Well, then upgrade your life with Columbia Power and Water Internet. CPWS Internet. You can get lightning fast internet with speeds up to an incredible 1 gig, so you can stream, game, and work seamlessly, all for $70 a month. If you are looking for local service and local support, visit cpws.com or call 931-375-7777 and tell them your friends at Main Street Sports Today sent you to CPWS. All right, Calvin, the reason this topic was on my brain, and there's no way to predict this, but I'm watching the Backyard Brawl Saturday. It's West Virginia and Pitt. And I say there's no way to predict this. West Virginia is not as dominant as they used to be, obviously. But it has been a dream of mine to go to Morgantown when West Virginia is absolutely rolling. And, I probably missed my chance. I don't know if they'll ever get back to the real glory years that they had back in my college era with Rich Rod and those Pat White, Steve Slate. Now I got to watch those guys all as coaches. They're not on the field anymore. But that kind of got my brain wondering. And I was like, I wonder what other stadiums might be out there that we would want to visit. So that's the backdrop for today's topic. Give me your number 1 pick. We're talking sports across all genres here, all modes. It could be anything, but stadiums that are on your sports bucket list. You got the first pick today.
Yeah, I've always been a big college basketball fan. That's my favorite sport. Haven't got the chance to really travel around and get to some of the bigger arenas. I've been to Cameron Indoor, just not for a Duke men's game. MTSU played Colorado up there, women's basketball, the women's tournament a couple years ago. But My number one pick is going to be Allen Fieldhouse over in Kansas, where the
Yeah.
Jayhawks play. That's the best environment. I've obviously never been, but everybody says it's the best environment by far in college basketball. So I would love to get out there for a game one time eventually.
Yeah, that one is about as good as it gets, and Kansas is luckily more often than not they're really, really good, really, really loaded. Last year they were preseason number 1, didn't do so hot, but the energy and the intensity is there. I'm with you. That is on my short list of places to get out to as well. I'm going to scratch West Virginia off my list because they were kind of the basis for this pick here, and these are kind of in no particular order. But Death Valley, if you could guarantee me a night game at Death Valley, and for the record, I'm talking about the one in Baton Rouge because they won that battle versus Clemson this year, so I don't want any Clemson fans. I've been to the Clemson Death Valley, and it was, take it or leave it. But give me a night game at LSU, Death Valley. That's the one that I want to try and hit up before I pass.
Yeah, always looks really fun on TV. LSU is usually pretty good. But my list is very college basketball heavy. My number 2 pick would be the Dean Smith Center, where the Tar Heels play. That one's always live on TV. Just a really raucous environment. Just like Allen Fieldhouse, I would love to get out there for a game because more often than not, North Carolina is good enough to pack that thing out regularly.
Absolutely. That is a good one. That Clemson game, I went to Clemson MTSU's in 2009, and that was before Clemson was really, really rolling. So maybe I should go back. I feel a little bad maybe disparaging the Tigers there, but I still stand by my LSU Death Valley number 1. Number 2 for me on this list, this is kind of a quote-unquote basic answer, but I'm going Fenway Park. Man, give me a game at Fenway Park. Red Sox playoffs would be even better. Give me a postseason game, but I got to go a little basic there, but Fenway Park's my number 2.
Yeah, that was my next pick, and it was going to be my number 3. Red Sox more often than not, they had years there where they would go from, worst to first and things like that. But over the last couple of years, they've at least been pretty decent to fill it up mostly on the regular. But it's been the same stadium for 100 years. It's part of history. It's one of the most famous stadiums in any sport. So would love to get out there for a game. Wade appears to be frozen. Are you frozen,
I'm back.
Wade?
I'm back, partner. Give us your number 3. We're running a little thin on time here.
My number 3 was Fenway, but moving to number 4, I'd say Wrigley Field, the Cubs. Like Fenway, just another iconic stadium. Obviously, the ivy out there. Cubs more often than not are decent enough to fill it up, and just would like to just go and see. One of the most famous stadiums in baseball.
I'm with you. Fenway / Wrigley. I was going to flip a coin because I don't want to double up on those two. But yes, I went with Fenway, but Wrigley would be right there as well. I will double up here with my 3rd pick, and then I'll take my 4th, and we'll close with you with number 5. Number 3 for me is Lambeau Field. It certainly helps that the Packers are rolling right now, but it'd be epic to get up there. This one, number 4, I want to predicate by saying only if the Knicks are good. But if you give me like a playoff game when the Garden is rocking, oh man, it would give me goosebumps. I'd love to be there just to check it out one time. So MSG's up there for me as well. Your last one.
Yeah, and then, just a note on Madison Square Garden, there's a bunch of college people that call games in there that say when the Knicks are good, it does not compare to when good college teams are in there. The Garden is different when the Knicks are good. But my number 5 pick is going to be the Breslin Center, where Michigan State men's basketball plays. Tom Izzo's had that program. He's got the longest streak of consecutive NCAA tournaments made. He's made it almost 30 years in a row. They fill that thing up on the regular, and it's loud even on TV.
The Michigan fan of me doesn't like that, but I respect it. My number 5 is Arkansas football. If they can call the Hogs when they're rolling, I love it. Pretty good list by both of us here. And I'm going to load my Ticketmaster account and see how much money I don't have right now. But I digress. That's all the time we got, folks. Thank you guys for tuning in to Top 5 Tuesday and this episode of Main Street Sports Today. Calvin and David Wilson are back tomorrow for Wild and Wacky Wednesday. We'll see you then.